So let's do the English. May all beings have happiness and create the causes of happiness. May they all be free from suffering and creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal, impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Sem jentam je dewa tang dewe ju tang den pa ju je dungal tang dungal chit ju tang tra wa ju chik dungal mepe dewa tampa tang mindra wa ju chik nearing chak tang ni tang tra we tang nom chen po la ne pa ju chik. Okay, sorry about that. It was a bit of a disaster, but anyway, I know that Amitabha will know that the beings will know, Guru Rinpoche will know that our offering was absolutely done with the best intention, but Bernard is a long one. You know, the only way you could do Amitabha before the groups is to either start a bit earlier, which is very really difficult for me, or to cut the music down. I don't know if that's possible for you. I can't do it on here. You'd have to re-record and just cut it down a bit.
Don't have anything to record anymore, Mel. I've got no machines anymore.
Okay.
The only thing that you actually can't really even cut it down. Because
well,
the only time
music doesn't have to be for so long, and that'll cut 5 minutes off.
But that music was for the dissolving and the visualization.
No,
and
that was also, yeah. You see, because I know that Lama Sundru does much less music. She doesn't have all
but can't you ask her to give you a copy of what she's got?
No, I don't know if she does Amitabha. So let's leave that for now. We'll discuss it. If we can make it a bit shorter. It's too long to be able to do before a group, but never mind.
And also, we were late today. We started at least 10 minutes late.
But the thing is that I was here on time, but it was also the discussion to give people a little bit of background, which is important when you do it. Anyway, let's leave it. So today we're going on with changing our lives with Garab Dorje's 3 statements that strike the vital point. And I want to say to all of you that this is, last week we were discussing the Upadesha instructions that Garab Dorje left. I'm not going into it. You can go back to last week's session. But when he attained the rainbow body of light in the sky, and his disciple Manjushra Mitra was swooning because he was going, and Manjushra Mitra, he left these beautiful 3 statements, sometimes called 3 words, sometimes called, they've got all different names, sometimes called just the essence of everything. And Manjushri found it, in a casket in his right hand, in a crystal casket, there were these wonderful, wonderful instructions that he found. And the whole thing of an Upadesha like this, it's the most beautiful instruction that actually it's almost like the master pours his vase into the disciple. And at that time, the disciple actually knows as much as the master. So his understanding is completely complete. And that's what happened with Manjushra Mitra. It was very important. But today I want to start with a very special story from the Jung books. My old days with Jung were very lovely. And from the Jung books, I want to start with this beautiful story of a very, very primitive man. And I want you to listen carefully, because I think this sets the stage for what we're doing. So the story is very simple. It's a man who lived on his own, a primitive man who lived on the edge of the forest of the night, and he lived by keeping cattle. Now, he lived very happily with his cattle until one morning he went to milk them and found they had no milk to give. In other words, what he's looking at in his life, I'm just doing the interpretation to save a bit of time, what he was looking at in his life no longer had the sustenance for his old way. Very important, because when we come to a point where the old sustenance is no longer any good, we have to question what we did. He thought, this is very strange because I've given these cattle everything I could possibly have of the knowledge of grazing to make them produce milk. And I shall take particular care today so they're properly fed. So he took them, going on with our old lives. So he took them to one of the better grazing grounds and fed them well. And he thought, tomorrow morning, I shall get a wonderful lot of milk. But the next morning, they still had no milk to give. He did this repeatedly, which is what we do with our old lives. We keep on repeating them until at last he thought, no, there's something more than the mere grazing. Something else must be happening. So he kept watch on the cattle in their kraal, and in the middle of the night, he saw a cord coming down from the stars, and down this cord came a number of very beautiful young women and of the people of the stars, and they ran with containers to his cattle and started milking them. So he gives the explanation. In other words, the nourishment was already being withdrawn from him into a much higher place where the light of the future comes from. Well, he ran out, and the star people scattered immediately and ran up the cord as fast as they could, but he managed to get hold of one of the girls and pull her back. So he managed, in other words, to catch a portion of what he needed to and live with her as his wife. She had, of course, her container with her still, and she said to him, I am happy living with you, and I will work for you, but only on one condition, that you never look in this container without my permission. And he promised her that. So this went on very happily for some months. He went out to look after the cattle by day. She went out to work in the fields. They met at night. And he was perfectly content with that portion of meaning that had come down from the stars. Then one day when she was out and it was very hot, he came back, was very thirsty, had a drink of water, and then he saw the container and was suddenly very irritated and thought, this is ridiculous. Why shouldn't I look in it? He went, took the lid off, looked inside, put it back and laughed. That evening when they met again, the woman gave him one look and exclaimed, you have looked in my container, she said. Yes, I have, he answered, and added, you silly creature, why did you make such a fuss about the container when the container all the time was empty? Empty, she uttered, distressed. Yes, empty. And at once she became very sad, turned her back on him, walked straight into the sunset, and was never seen again on earth. It did not matter him breaking his word so much. What really mattered was that he could not see anything in the container, the other things that she had brought from the stars for both of them. And in the end, he explains, this is a terrifying image of a terrifying moment in our lives when we can no longer see what we have naturally in the container, which is our pure being, our Buddha nature, which is not the I, none of that. It's not that we've not got a container full of starlight, as it were, but we've lost the capacity to look into it and see what has been put there of new meaning when that which fed us can feed us no longer. That, for the first man of life, was a loss of his soul, of everything else, and implied a living death thereafter. Now that story is really, really very important, because it really is what we have actually come to, that we can't any longer see the meaning. We can't understand the meaning of emptiness. We can't understand the fact that things are not solid. We can't understand that things never belonged to us in the first place. We can't understand any of these things. We've lost the true meaning of who we are and what we're doing here. And that is a very important point. And I think that Garab Dorje, when he gave this, being the first human teacher of Dzogchen on the planet, when he gave these 3 instructions, they were very, very, very important. And in fact, when Keith Dowman wrote this book, the Dzogchen view. I think it's called the Dzogchen view. And in it, all these great masters have actually put their sort of explanations on Garab Dorje's 3 statements, so you can see that this is something really seriously regarded by very high masters, many of them, like Dajjal Rinpoche, Patrul Rinpoche, or everybody's going through this load shedding today. Really, it's really important that we understand that these are the most important things that we have to do with our life. And so if we look again, what I was telling you last week is that these instructions were extremely important. These instructions were so important for the submitting of the of these upadeshas, these secret instructions. And if we look very carefully, Garab Dorje was an emanation of Vajrasattva, and he received the teachings directly from Vajrasattva, who received the teaching from Samantabhadra. Now, are all these beings, or is Samantabhadra the Dharmakaya? And so Samantabhadra gives it over to the Sambhogakaya, gives it over to the Nirmanakaya, who is Garab Dorje, and then it comes to our world. And I think this is really, really, really important when we look at it. And let's start today by really, after that story, by really looking at these 3 statements and what do they mean. We've got to go in depth of Tulku Urgent's state that of what he really teaches us on these 3 statements. All these very high masters have teach him. So the first one is one is introduced directly to one's own nature. Now, that's exactly like the story of the bucket. We need that introduction because we've forgotten. It's just simple. As you saw, she had to come. He couldn't see in the bucket. We need that explanation extremely urgently, okay? And so one is introduced directly to your own nature. Now, what's important in this is that if we look at this in Buddhism, we have the view, the path, and the fruition. The view and the fruition are exactly the same. The path is there so that we can clean ourselves up and get to recognize, re-know, and come back to the fruition. Now, it's really important that you understand this because the path is what we are given in order to get there. But as Patrul Rinpoche says, without the true view, we will never get enlightened. Okay, so we have to have the true view. We have to know, somebody has to actually come and say, this is who you are. And they kind of have to pour their vase into you. Okay, now when you are ready, that teacher will appear, whether that teacher appears in your dreams, if you're in a place where there aren't any great masters, however that teacher appears, that teacher will come and give you a direct introduction. But you don't get a direct introduction until you know. Only when you are ready, you get that direct introduction. When you're not ready, it's absolutely impossible. It'll be right over your head. So I told you I once went to Minja Dorje, last week I told you I went to Minja Dorje's pointing out instructions. It was a lecture called Pointing Out Instructions, okay, many years ago. And truly, I didn't understand anything at all. I didn't get it. I promise you I didn't get it. So he gave it in public to a lot of people. Well, I definitely didn't get it at all. And that was because I wasn't ready. So what we're doing on the path is we also making ourselves ready. We're opening up. So all this teaching that I happen to have access to and I'm trying to give you is your way of preparing yourself so that when you are ready, you will be able to get the introduction. So let's just read the 3 statements. And then after that, we'll go into each one. So this is what was in his little casket. One is introduced directly to one's own nature. That's the view. Then the second point is one definitively decides upon this unique state. Now, this is so important because if you don't definitively, if you lie to yourself, cheat yourself, tell yourself you're doing one thing and you're not, it'll have no effect. In fact, the consequences are not good because then you're actually bluffing yourself. There's no point in bluffing yourself. You need to definitively decide that this is the unique state, and that is the path, sometimes called the meditation. That's all you're doing in your meditation, is you deciding on this very unique state, okay? And then the third point is one continues directly with confidence in liberation. Now, this is so important. If you don't have confidence in liberation, that's called the fruition. It's also sometimes called the conduct. So you've got the view or the ground or the essence or the dharmakaya, whatever you want to call it. And then you've got the path, which is the meditation and all the instructions on it. And then you've got the fruition, which takes in it the conduct. And if you don't do that with absolute confidence, which is what I'm going to teach you from these great masters, then there's no point. It's really, really, really important that these three, the view, the path, and the fruition, come into everything. And I'll give you some other synonyms for them a bit later. But I really want you to understand that you've got to get to the right view. And that's where your questions come in. That's where your debating with me comes in. It's really important to get that right view, because otherwise you'll never be able to reach that statement. Anyone want to say anything? Or of the story of the beautiful bucket, anyone want to say anything? Or ask anything?
Yeah, hi, Mel, I do, if no one else does. With the earlier story, it just reminded me, trying to get the milk out the cow for your whole life and then realizing towards the end of your life that, you know what, it's just not providing the milk anymore, but still not accepting that it's not providing the joy, the satisfaction we're looking for. The parallel I drew quickly was just with hedonia, with mundane pleasure, outward pleasure. The older we get, the less our capacity to actually extract that joy. I mean, you can't even stay up long enough. You can't go out to the clubs if you even want to. You can't really do these things. So it reminded me of that. The older we get, the fake mode of happiness becomes less attainable, and the authentic mode of happiness actually becomes more attainable, but we blinded to the authentic joy. We're still trying to extract from the fake one.
Yeah, definitely. And that's very important what you're saying, because I think that all of us have got to come to that absolutely almost frightening moment, and sometimes revelationary moment, where suddenly you go, this isn't giving me what I want. I mean, I said to my husband this weekend, I said, I think I should go to India for 3 months again. I didn't say 6, I said for 3. So he said, go, I'll get you the ticket, goodbye, cheers, or you go to India, okay? So I said, well, I'll have to fit it in with all the other activities of our life. But the thing is, you come to a point in your life where you have to do what you have to do with the people around you, with the karma around you, with what you've got. But the bottom line is, suddenly it's got so little meaning. And so if I'm watching television, I'm cleaning out my files and folders at the same time. So I watch with one eye. I can multitask and do that because there's no time to waste. So I've got a lot of earthly responsibilities, Eric, a lot, with all my children, grandchildren, everybody. I've got a fortune of responsibilities, and they get really mad with me, but I still have to find that meaning all the time. And that's very, very important. It really is. So anyone else want to ask or say anything? Anyone? Okay, then let's just go on to that introduction. And I was saying last week that it's really important to look how different disciples get their introduction to the nature of mind. Okay, I got it in a very strange way much later on from Taisitu Rinpoche introduced me. But I really took in every single word he said. I don't think I got it right then, but I worked and worked and meditated and meditated. And eventually it started really sinking in. That was the way I got some introduction. Still hasn't sunk in, but I mean, I still go, you know, looking at what he told me, how things were. He just explained to me how things were. And it was a shock, even though I knew lots of the things that he said, but coming from his energy and his everything, it was actually amazing. And I told you last week that that Patrul Rinpoche gave Noshul Kempo by lying on the ground and just making him look at the sky, look at the stars, hear the barking in the monastery, and he got it, the real thing. It's very simple. It's not something extraordinary, but I must say that Patrul Rinpoche himself got the most incredible introduction, and that's what I want to say, because all kinds of skillful means are used by the master in this first statement to actually provoke that shift of consciousness. So what the master is giving you is he's taking you from your ordinary consciousness. And someone like Patrul Rinpoche, I don't think ever used his ordinary consciousness, but he still needed a shift in order to actually realize that primordial consciousness. So this is how he got his introduction. He'd been doing an advanced practice of yoga and visualization and had become stuck. He became stuck, so poor us, okay? None of the mandalas, of the deities would appear clearly in his mind. And one day he came upon Dokiensi, who made a fire out in the open and was sitting in front of it, drinking. Now, the story I originally got was that he was drinking this beer, this particular Tibetan beer, and he was drinking quite a lot. And he says here, in this story, it said he was drinking tea, but I heard that he was drinking beer. And when he walked along, Patrul Rinpoche thought to himself, oh my goodness, he's drunk. Okay, so this is what happened afterwards. He thought, my master is drunk. Of course, none of those masters ever get drunk. So this is what happened. In Tibet, when you see a master for whom you have deep devotion, traditionally you begin to prostrate your body on the ground as a mark of your respect. As Patrul Rinpoche started prostrating from the distance, and Dilgo Khyentse could read his mind that he thought, my God, my Lama is drunk. You know, I can't believe it. Thupten also had that experience once when Akon Rinpoche was out and he had had a lot to drink. And he was coming home and all the monks got together and they all held him up because he was walking a little bit tipsy when he came home, and everybody was giggling and everybody was going like this because they couldn't believe it. And then as he was walking along, and Thupten tells the story, he suddenly said, just to trick them, he said, do you see that pin on the floor in the corner? Go and pick it up. Just to show that he wasn't drunk, and that even if he'd had something to drink, his mind was in its real primordial consciousness. Anyway, so Dokiense spotted him and growled menacing, hey, you old dog, if you are brave, then come over here. Dokiense was a very impressive master. He was like a samurai with his long hair, his rakish clothes, and his passion for riding beautiful horses. As Patrul Rinpoche continued doing prostrations and began to approach closer, Dokiense, cursing him all the time, started to hurl pebbles at him and gradually larger rocks and stones. He was bleeding. The master was throwing everything at him. When he finally came within reach, Dokiense started punching him and knocked him out altogether. When Patrul Rinpoche came to, he was in an entirely different state of consciousness. The mandalas he had been trying so hard to visualize spontaneously manifested right in front of him. Each of Do Kyentse's curses and insults had destroyed the last remnants of Patrul Rinpoche's conceptual mind, and each stone that hit him opened up the energy centers and subtle channels in his body. For 2 marvelous weeks, the visions of the mandala didn't leave him. Now, interesting, because you go, oh my God, can you imagine if a master slaps me? If a master slaps you, you're in the pound seats, okay? Because you need it, and it's going to shake you out of all your rubbish on this earth plane and make you absolutely be there. Okay, I've got little Patricia sitting next to me here, and she had to move in through various circumstances into a small apartment. In order to do that, she had to get rid of about, I think, 90% of all her goods and shackles. And she went there, and she went into the small apartment. And I said to her, don't see it as a small apartment. See it as enormous, almost as though everything in this life has actually been taken away from you, and now you've got your job of seeing yourself and going along that pathway, which is really difficult for us because we're so attached to all the things in our life. We're so busy, we're so holding on to them and everything. It's unbelievable, but still, it's such a beautiful lesson. And I said to her, she's really lucky she had that, because I'm looking around my house and thinking, how am I ever going to get rid of absolutely everything that there is in this house, you know? And when you're depossessed of all your possessions, that's when you can look at who you really are, because nobody ever takes away your true nature of mind. It's always there. And it takes an enlightened being to introduce you to it. And then you're never afraid again. You might be a little afraid if you have a death sentence over you, you might be a little afraid, whatever, but it's unbelievable when you actually understand where you are, that true nature of mind is absolutely amazing. And Patrul Rinpoche he explains the method, because he did the commentary on Garab Dorje's thing. He explains the method for practicing the view. We have been directly introduced to the state of contemplation. And then, through regular practice, as Tulku Urgent says, short practices, and many of them, we will come into a direct experience called Nyam Yong, okay, of the state. Then we go to developing genuine understanding regarding Rigpa. Rigpa is defined as a state, you can't define it, but if you want to define it, it's a state of immediate, intrinsic awareness. Now just think about that definition that Patrul gives. Immediate, intrinsic awareness, the knowledge found in the state of contemplation. And we're going to practice the state of contemplation straight after this. But what I want to say is, if you look at immediate intrinsic awareness, that is your nature that is known to you. And everything that you've got to do, including your earthly things, are known to you. And once they are known to you, tomorrow night, when I do that differentiation between Sem and Rigpa, we have to know Sem, the human mind, because the human mind trips us up all the time. Now, there was this wonderful, wonderful master who still had the slight conceptual consciousness, which Dilgo Kyentse killed off him, absolutely. And so we've got to be aware of how we operate, of what we do, of how we do it, so that we know that intrinsic awareness, which is really, really, really important. And he goes on to say a little bit later, which is important, and then we're going to do the practice of contemplation. He says, if we recognize this state and settle into it, this is the practice of Dzogchen. Dzogchen is called sometimes the great perfection and sometimes the great completion, because it's all inside us. If we don't recognize it, then mind continues to erect thought constructions like walls of a prison, limiting and confining our space until suffocation. Now ponder that, until suffocation. And Jigme Lingpa, who was my great teacher that I really used a lot of, he says, aside from having this rigpa not lose its own spot, nothing else is necessary. Nothing, no thing is necessary except that. And when Patrul Rinpoche looks at the base, which is the view, which is the essence, which is the Dharmakaya, this is what he says. Immediate intrinsic awareness abides in the base. It's the Dharmakaya itself from which everything comes. In his direct introduction, the master likens the base to the empty open dimension of the absolute infinite sky, while Rigpa, its capacity for awareness, is like the sun shining in the sky. The energy and potentiality of this awareness is like countless rays of sunlight that illuminate all things in the world. Even when the sky is filled with clouds, the sun is there. Otherwise, there'd be total darkness. Buddha nature is the same. It's always there. The mark of its presence, even if you don't recognize it, is that we exist as sentient beings possessing awareness and consciousness. Because of its presence, we still have awareness and consciousness. This presence existed in the universe from the very beginning, like the vast expanse of space, not made by a creator. In essence, it transcends time and conditioning. That's what he says about your essence. Now, this is the most important statement, maybe, of the whole session. Awareness did not come into being out of existence. Existence came into being out of awareness. And I read that again. Awareness did not come into being out of existence, but existence came into being out of awareness. So awareness is that sunshine, the light rays, and everything you see, including us, came out of awareness. The whole of existence, the plants, the trees, the animals, the humans, everything came out of awareness. Awareness can never come out of existence. Now, think about that. We come into embodiment, and then our parents teach us about existence, 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 existence. And they teach us about this God that's up there who's watching you and who created everything and at whose mercy you are. This is what we learn. Now, that is saying that out of existence comes awareness. Not true, because existence was always there from the beginning. And because of existence and because of the cognizant nature, the awareness in existence, so the world came into being. This is so important when you get that introduction, everybody. Please hear me very, very clearly, because it's really, really important. And I want to go on to doing the state of contemplation as a meditation. But anyone ask anything, say anything, give me your comments, not only Eric, all of you, because it's really, really important. And it's also important if you've got a comment that you think, oh, this is stupid or something, then you're silly not to bring it out, because it's really, really important. Eric, wait, let someone else have a chance. Anyone else before Eric does? Any of you two?
Everything that we've ever been taught is back upside down and back to front. So it's actually changing everything if you're going to get anywhere near there.
Absolutely. And how does that affect you? You personally? Me
personally, I've got to actually, I have to do something more this lifetime. I'm not going to repeat.
Yeah.
Have to.
Yeah. You know, all of us feel that we don't want to repeat what we've gone through in this lifetime. None of us, some of us want to, but lots of us don't want to repeat all our things from this lifetime. But the thing is, if we don't turn it upside down onto its head and really understand this, then what's the point? I mean, these three statements, I can put them out into daily life. I can put them out into ordinary consciousness. I can put them out in every conceivable way, so you can all really, really learn. But if we don't change how we see the world, and that existence came out of being because of awareness, not the other way around, then we've missed out. And all I can say to all of you is that if any of you suddenly are facing death, like say, Tut, you going through whatever you're going through with that pacemaker, whatever you have to go through right now, okay. What's important is, I mean, in the end, in Rigpa, in the awareness, in this introduction to your true nature, there is no such a thing as birth and death. So if we understand this, then as soon as we come into our death, which will be a time when immediately all of this dissolves, all our thoughts dissolve, all our rubbish dissolves, form, feelings, perceptions, habits, all of that dissolves, except the Alaya consciousness will carry it over a little bit, unless, but at that point of death, that's when we introduce to the nature of mind. If we never got introduced in this life, we get introduced then. And you can either see it through one of two ways. Either you can see it in full essence, okay? Either you can see it in its complete full essence, which is the clear light there, or we can see it in its true expression, which is who we really are. So in other words, it came out of the essence, and we can see that when we come into death. So it's the most amazing, amazing thing, because at death, if we know this, we're through. Trust me, even if you get a bad death, or you have a sudden plane crash, or you have something like that, and you catapulted into death, and you're not sure where you are, and you're not sure, in 1 minute, if this is your conditioning, you'll know. I've got to say that it's very funny. I had to look for a teaching of mine for someone in the other group. Okay, so I had to, unfortunately, I had to watch myself through a couple of sessions, just quickly going through, and I thought, Melanie, why do you stress things so much? You know, you emphasize things, you use your hand. I mean, I'm standing outside myself, watching myself, which is a really funny thing to do, you know, watching the recording, because I say, why are you so emphatic? And then this morning I came to the conclusion in my practice that I am emphatic and just accept it. Okay, not dogmatic, but very, very passionate about how I feel about things. And so it comes through in my teaching. And I'm so glad I don't have to watch my teaching, except occasionally, you know.
Well,
Go on, Eric.
Viam.
Sorry, Viam. Yeah.
I've got this question. It just made me think of what we were talking about now. It's not necessarily directly on this, but like, you know, leading out of that, this concept of what I've heard before, and I might be not 100% accurate on it, but like the goal of the teachers teaching us and reincarnating to help us is to help us, you know, obviously gain an understanding of our true nature, right? For everyone to be liberated from what is seen as suffering, you know. But then this view of this nirvana and samsara is mixed together and has always been together, and what I perceive as suffering is only my perception based on my limited view. The bigger question is, what is it then that is supposed to come to an end? You know, is there such a thing that everyone needs to be liberated, and what then? You know, if everything is already perfect, like what is, you know, do you get what I'm...
I think, no, I get what you mean 100%. And I think you're absolutely right to ask that, because that was my story in the beginning of looking in the bucket and seeing it was empty and being absolutely petrified. So in other words, you're saying, if everything that we know gets taken away and we haven't really recognized what will happen to us, and I'm saying to you, you know what? This is the beautiful, beautiful part about it. Because I want every one of you to ask yourself the question. I'll come to your question in a sec, Gail. But I want you all to ask yourself the question. If everything I know gets taken away from me tomorrow morning, what will I do? Who will I be? Now, that is the question that every person who retires, unless those that have been giving service and they're still going to go on with their service, but people who retire get really scared and paranoid because everything they've ever known is taken away. Maybe their children have grown up, maybe they've gone, maybe their work is taken away, maybe all the things they've done have taken away. And I watch them one after another because I'm in that category now. Okay, I'm in that retirement category. So when we have friends and that over, I watch all these men who've now retired and everything. And I can see that many, many times my husband says, I'm going on working as long as I can. Okay, the bottom line is, if you can say to yourself, what would I be if everything is taken away from me? If you can say, I would be rich, I would follow the practices to such a degree, because inside me is this nature that never ever changes. It's this beautiful nature, rich as everything. And if you can actually understand that, then it doesn't matter when it's taken away. Because think about it, Liam. This is what we've been conditioned to for absolutely ages and ages and ages and ages. That's all we've been conditioned to. How to live, how to go to school, how to be. I begged Guru Rinpoche, I said, whatever you do, if you send me back for another incarnation, I'd rather be in a rainbow body and come wherever I need to. But if I have to come for another incarnation, please don't send me to Western education. Because all the years I spent getting Western education, it has helped me to understand people a little bit. But the bottom line is, none of it is, everything that is conditioned is of no assistance to you when you arrive at the gate of death. All your conditioned existence is of no benefit to you. Only what you understand about the truth. If, however, you do not, and I must just do a lecture on death of my own stuff, not from the books. I must actually do my own stuff for the lecture of death. But if you look at it, when you arrive at the gates of death, if you're clinging to what you knew and what you know, then you really are not going to see the first two gaps, the first two bardos. You will definitely wake up in the third bardo where your ordinary consciousness comes into play again. And then it's too late. So your ordinary consciousness, with all its imprints, just catapults you into another life. And if you haven't been a bad person, it's not a catastrophe. But imagine going through these lessons all over again. No, I can't. Truly, truly, truly. I really can't do that. And Gail's thing was, Mel, how can you change who you really are? Is your essence able to change? Such a good question. And I love it when you ask these questions. When you take away who you are, that's what I was talking about. And I'm talking about it on Tuesday night. Identitylessness. Identitylessness. Identityless is when you lose everything and you don't know where you are. Identitylessness means full of possibility to be whatever you need to be in service for all sentient beings. I mean, identitylessness is wonderful because it means you can just adapt wherever you are, but you're not holding on, you're not grasping, you're not fixating on your identity. Sorry, Eric, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, Mel, I did. It had to do with the earlier comment, and then my battery died, so I got bumped off. Now I think with the question, the more, the current topic, I think she's actually asking about the essence. Can the essence be changed? Can the ground be changed? Can that divine mind be changed? Of course, on the coarse mind and subtle mind, everything's changing. Imprints are always being added and so on. But I think the question is, can the divine mind be changed? Can the ground change? I don't know if I'm getting it wrong there from Gail. So
and that's true. No, it can never change because it is everything that there is. Thank you, Eric. It's everything that you are. It's everything that your being is all made up of. So no, it never, ever changes. But it can manifest differently. So that's where, when existence comes into being from awareness, it changes. You can change all the existing things that come out of awareness. But basically, no. The Buddha nature is the one permanent thing we've got. Nothing else is permanent. And they don't like to use permanent, the word permanent, because the word permanent makes it like closed, and it's always going to be there like a closed book. And that's not the truth, because it's not permanent. It's just never changing, but it's always changing. So it's never changing and it's always changing, but it's absolutely stable. That's the important thing. Stable is a better word than permanent. And you've always got it. And all of you who've been around, and I'm really sorry that half the people can't come in with all this load shedding, but all of you know this. So for sure, if you are dying and you've got all your family around you, ask them, say your goodbyes, do whatever you have to do, and then ask them to give you time to actually just contemplate that now you're going into that beautiful state, and you need to concentrate, and you can't have them tugging on you and crying on you and everything else. And it's really important. And I remember when my father was dying, his nurse that was there, was absolutely sobbing, and the maid was sobbing. And I asked them, I said, very sweetly, can you please go out of the room? Because I want him to concentrate on where he's going. And then he came back in a dream to tell me how beautiful the passing over had been. And he was so aware. He really was aware. So I found that absolutely exquisite. He was much more aware than my mother, and my mother had much more knowledge than my father did from me. But my father was amazing when he died. And the only thing I want to say to you is that at that time, it was a very long time ago, but I said to him, I said to him, well, I can come with you to when you look at your karma. And he said, no, he needed to go by himself. Okay, he really needed to see that for himself, which was quite funny, you know, because that's how I believed in those days. Of course, I wouldn't say that now, but in those days, that's what I said to him, because I didn't want him to suffer too much, you know, when he looked at his karma. But let's do contemplation, everybody, as it comes from the golden letters. So, into your meditation posture, please. We haven't even started Tulku Urjan's thing. Okay. Breathe in and breathe out. And just like you take your shoes off when you come into a shrine room, just leave everything outside your room. And give me your whole selves. Just give me everything. Come to yourself and try to understand contemplation, the state of contemplation that is given in these teachings. And the essential point of the state of contemplation is the state of immediate intrinsic awareness. So I want you to be fully here in this moment. Think about you knowing everything. The past is gone, the future hasn't been made, the present moment is changing every second. We need to go to another time dimension. While in a state of contemplation, a condition that is together with the view of emptiness, all of one's thoughts and actions just continue as usual, without any deliberate calculation on one's part, or any attempts at creating or stopping anything. Absolutely no conceptual elaboration. Nothing. Whatever comes into your space, just let it be. Neither the calm state of shamatha nor the movement of thoughts when you're looking into your mind, vipassana, represents rigpa. Neither of them. The thoughts are the power, energy, potentiality, and expression of the spontaneous energy of the mind. Rigpa, your intrinsic awareness, can be discovered in either of these two experiences. In other words, if your mind is in a state of calm with very little thought or no thought, that is fine. If your mind is moving with a lot of things you're doing at the moment, that is fine. Just let it be what it is. Rigpa is not the temporary experience itself, but this immediate awareness of that experience. So I know, I can see that thought, but I'm not conceptualizing it. You just let it come up. Experiences diverse, occurring in unaccountable variations. But this presence or immediate awareness is the one thing, the single thing discovered in all experience. And after a calm state, we proceed to detached observation of the movement of thoughts. So we're just watching them, nothing to be done. This immediate awareness is unique and ever the same. It is the capacity of the nature of mind. Capacity unlimited. We become aware of the unrestricted and unlimited capacity of the mirror of our true nature to reflect everything don't stop anything. We don't get rid of anything. We don't analyze it. We just let it come up. Whatever distort things you're going through, let them be. Whatever joyful things you're going through, let it be. Just let everything be. This immediate presence is the one thing we must discover everywhere. So we come to live in the nature of the mirror, not in the reflections. At the moment, we live in the reflections. Now we are stepping back and we're living in the nature. We are living in the nature of our true self. And when we relax your physical body, we recognize thoughts and passions as just being the creative play of the mind. In Tibetan, that's called Tsao. We don't suppress them. We don't interfere with them. We don't get distracted by them. We don't follow them. We just recognize them to represent the continuous display of the inherent creative energy of primordial awareness. This is the state of contemplation. Whatever thoughts arise, they arise purified by way of the inherent potentiality of that beautiful intrinsic awareness. It's your torch. You just shine it, and then they all just dissolve. When thoughts arise, if we don't suppress or interfere with them, but recognize them to represent the continuous display of the inherent creative energy of that beautiful awareness. Doing this, there will be neither benefit nor harm for the individual. We just continue in contemplation. For all of you, I know I'm doing a lot of words, but then you can practice the words when you are alone. But when negative thoughts and passions arise, don't give them an antidote. Don't start saying, this is wrong and I better do this and I better get rid of them. All the antidotes are just not even anything. Let them be. Just settle into the state of Rigpa, the single and sufficient antidote is awareness. And this antidote is like a panacea that cures all ills. The contemplation is total, all-embracing, and continuous under all circumstances. Not only when you meditate, but when you're doing your work, when you're fighting with someone, whatever you're doing, you just go to that intrinsic awareness continuously. You keep remembering. It is self-settled because it is natural and spontaneous. It is non-meditation because it lies beyond the mind and the workings of the mind. No meditation, no visualization. With Rigpa, no creating by the mind, no creating the state of meditation, no creating the state of visualization. And finally, in the state of contemplation, internal awareness, knowing that deep, immediate awareness, and external appearance, the thoughts, the situations, the feelings, everything that's happening around you, encounter each other and become integrated. When we don't do this, we go into a state of duality. I'm here and You're there. I'm here, and this is a feeling I'm fighting with. I'm here, and I need to get rid of thoughts. I'm here, and this is what I need to do. No, no. Just sit. Get into a state of immediate, now, intrinsic awareness. And then everything will join with each other. The internal awareness and the external appearance encounter each other, and they become integrated. And then they just liberate of their own accord. Use this all day, every day. So now I'm giving it to you as a meditation. But next, when you come across somebody you don't like, somebody you don't want to be with, somebody you feel anger about, a situation you hate, a circumstance you want to get rid of, a circumstance you want to grasp, just stand back in that immediate, intrinsic awareness and allow everything to integrate into each other. And it will all solve itself. The panacea, the remedy, is that immediate, intrinsic awareness. Now I know that was a lot of talking, but tell me what you got from that, because that is how the golden letters, Tattva Rinpoche, translated by John Murden Reynolds, gives the state of contemplation. And for me, it's like a key. So I think that instead of just sitting there, it doesn't. And why are you jumping around, Eric? I was watching you when you were meditating. You're jumping around. Just to let yourself. I'm not saying that sitting still is absolutely essential. You can jump around if you want, because that's fine. As long as you are aware that you are jumping around. So your movements have got to be with full awareness, then you can jump around. But everybody was absolutely still except you.
I'm sitting on the floor next to the charger, and it's very uncomfortable. Plus, I was making notes that were still coming to me from previous things, but it's because I'm next to the charger here on the floor. So I don't really have my meditation.
Not the state of contemplation. You need to practice. That's what I'm trying to say to you. You need it to come into you. Don't make notes. You can all get these things. You can ask Burns, not Burn, you can ask Nadine. She's putting them onto YouTube. So you can do this with yourself. You know, you can't, I don't want you to give it to outside people too much, but you can get it on YouTube when you've got the thing. Nadine will give you the link. And then you can listen
automatically again. On the newsletter. The link is automatically on the newsletter. So any of these new lectures go straight up.
Yeah.
And if you really want it, you can ask for it to get sent to you.
Oh, so instead of writing notes, you should have rather been concentrating, Eric. And that's exactly, I'm glad that I'm saying this, because that's exactly what I'm talking about. So in the now, this was a chance for me to give you Patrul Rinpoche's instructions, not mine are pathetic, but Patrul Rinpoche's instructions. So the important thing is that you're able to digest these instructions, ponder them, and use them. So like, for example, if you are sitting with somebody that's really irritating you, okay, you start looking at your intrinsic awareness, what it feels, and let that intrinsic awareness just dissolve the tension between you and that person. It's a tool. It's the tool you're left with when you die. And all those people who get lost in the bardos are the people that don't know they've got immediate intrinsic awareness. So they're trying to use their intellect. And when you die, your intellect and your analysis and your everything doesn't help you, because now you're in another state. And so it's really, really important that you all get this and understand it and practice seeing the two come together. Here's my thought, or here's my feeling, especially if it's an ugly feeling, and the feeling and the intrinsic awareness must meet each other instantly. Now, when you come to, you need to develop confidence in the liberation, which is Garab Dorje's last point. We will do the actual liberation techniques. We will do the techniques he gives as to how to get this to work. But in the meantime, in that view, that introduction, we have to know intrinsic awareness. This is difficult teaching, everybody. And yet it's so simple. And it gives you absolutely everything. And Betty, are you better and are you okay? Are you absorbing this, Bet?
I'm really okay. I've been doing extremely well.
Good.
Going to my heart and, you know, like realizing that we're powerful, very powerful beings. And by going to your heart, you become free. You just let yourself, you know, you can actually heal ourselves. You just need to sit and just be. We're not human doings or human beings. We're not sitting, you know, I just realized this. And
Good.
I've been in a very good, peaceful state.
Good.
In my heart. I feel really good.
Very good. I'm really pleased
Thank you.
This is really, really what you need. Tatiana, I can't call you Tat, it's such a beautiful name. Tell me about you. Because, you know, I just want to say one thing. What I realized is that at night, I'm going to cut the sessions down by 15 minutes. Because last week, I just realized that people were so tired by 8:45 that it was enough. I don't mind switching off and then just letting people chat to me. That's fine. But you know what? I realized, like, I've got all these dozens and dozens and dozens of pages of absolutely golden instructions and everything. And I'm not rushing through them. Even if you see, you know, the same titles, I have to do them slowly, and I have to get you to tell me what you feel, because it's really important. Otherwise, just another teaching. It's another, you know, it's another, it doesn't really go in, doesn't really help. Tatiana?
Mel, I'm well, thank you.
Good.
I'm very peaceful. I am content with where I am. I think talking to you reassured me a lot, and very grateful.
Very good. That's more than good enough for me. More than good enough. And that's all I want. I want you all to be at peace. And some of you I know are not non-peaceful, but, you know, this group, however it works out, I mean, it's actually a huge, enormous group, and people are not managing to come on a regular basis. But my feeling is, well, people must just get the teaching. They must catch up on it, you know, because these are sessions. You can't leave a session out and then catch up afterwards. You've got to actually get, you know, you've got to get what I'm trying to teach you, not what I'm trying to teach, what I'm trying to impart to you from, you know, from all of the great masters. And next week we'll start with Tuku Urgence. But I think, you know, this is the most important thing. And then when adversity comes, which it happens to all of us, when adversity comes, we have a really calm disposition. Because, like, if you take that story of Patrul Rinpoche getting introduced, I mean, it's actually amazing that he gets introduced, and most of what he got is about him cleaning himself up, which to me is absolutely unbelievable, you know, that he's still got that. Even when we go, he's still got lots of things to learn and do. So I'm not going to do that.
Mel,
Yes.
sorry, if I can just say one little last thing.
Of course.
Being fairly new, I was completely overwhelmed because it's such a complex variety of things to come to grips with. There are so many different philosophies, different people's interpretations, different ways of doing things. So I decided not to sweat the small stuff.
Good.
And let things happen.
Yeah.
And if it's meant for me to go in the right direction, then I will. It would be very nice to have a teacher, a more personal teacher. And that's one thing I think maybe would help. I think that without Lama Yeshe being here, without a monk like Samtam doing an introduction to Buddhism, people that come new into this can get very lost.
Okay, but let me say
Feel your way.
Yeah, let me say a couple of things on that, and it's really important. You know, I think that we are in an age now where that personalized teaching is very, very rare, more than, I mean, if you're in Tibet, you're likely to have a master and a guru and everything else. But where we are, we're in that age, which for me, it is so lucky that we're in the age of technology is amazing in that we actually can get to these masters a lot in the technology. Now, I've been listening to Dzongkar Khyentse Rinpoche, who was the same Choki Lodro that I taught you the Namta of. And the modern one, the one now, I mean, he's so Western that it's unbelievable. You know, I can't believe that he knows everything about everything in the West. And you can go on onto that, and it's called Siddhartha's Intent, the actual series of teachings. And you can go in there and you can get all his teachings. Now, I dialogue with him. My husband hears me in the bathroom. I talk back to him when I'm listening to him. I go, that's a really good idea. And he comes in the bathroom and he says, who are you talking to? I say, Dzongkar Khyentse Rinpoche. That's who I'm talking to. I have lots of dialogues with him, and a lot of the answers come to me afterward. There's so many of these amazing masters, okay? And, you know, Lama Yeshe says to me, you've got the responsibility of giving to people, you know, a lot of people what they're looking for and everything. And that's why I allow myself to be available to people as much as they really want. I really try, and that's quite demanding of me and my time, but it doesn't matter, because for me, if I can manage to have one person to wake up in this life, then I've done a lot. Okay. And the point is, even with this group, I know this group, there are about 25 to 30 people that belong to this group. And since the load shedding and since all of this, they're in, out. Some are overseas, some are here, some are there, some are this, and all of that kind of thing. I just say it doesn't matter. Let me bring you the teachings as best I can. Let's compare the ordinary consciousness to the primordial consciousness. But most important of all things, Tat, is that I find that if people are consistent in their attendance, if they are absolutely consistent in doing some practice and in attending consistently, there comes a day where you know, I got it. Okay, that's how I do it. I go consistently through things, and sometimes I'm a little bored and restless, and then I suddenly get something. As long as you are consistent, Guru Rinpoche will always be there. He's always been there for me. I always get a little answer, a little book, a little this, a little that, and then I get, or a little teaching, and then I get all that I need, you know, to be answered. So it's all there, but the consistency is what's important. Not that you get every single thing that's there. That's first of all. And secondly, my beginners groups are all available. Okay, so they're all available for people. And I did 3 beginners groups and 3 sessions on the karmic imprints versus whatever, I don't even remember how I called it, but those 6 talks are a complete introduction to everything. And so if people want to, if they're really determined, they can go and sit down and watch those. And I've told people to do that. But, you know, there's so much on the internet and everything. And you can all ask me, is this a good thing? Is that I usually know, you know, a lot of the masters and everything that are giving teaching. There's so much we can get, but it's not about so much. It's about one connection. And trust me, when you are 100% ready, the master will appear. Okay. I remember when I was reading and studying Namkhai Nobu's stuff, and I really liked it and I related to it and everything. And then when I was going to go to him in the, whatever that, one of the French islands, I can't remember, when I was going to go, the last minute he got sick and he didn't go. Well, it wasn't for me. I went, but he didn't go. And I had to teach them, having a French translator who spoke much longer than the words I gave. So it was really quite an experience. But in any case, I had him in the sleep state. And I was lying in this little caravan, and he came in. I was so surprised to see him. And I put my hand out and he put his hand out, and I could feel something coming through my hand in the dream. And so whatever happened, happened. Whatever I needed was given to me in the sleep state. And that was that. And I also had one with Jamkong Control Rinpoche. He was in the retreat in India when I was there. And he came into my room and we did a whole dialogue sitting on the bed in a dream. And then I've had Dilgo Kienzi visit me in a dream. And I've had lots of these lamas. I've had Tai Situ visit me a few times. So if you start with your awareness, you will get those. You've just got to be ready. And there they are. Remember that, will you? Because it doesn't have to be on this level. It doesn't have to be like that. It can be just having something. When you are ready, the universe provides. There's no doubt in my mind.
So true. Thank you, Mel.
Viam, I'm going to listen to your question. Just let's end because we are a bit late, and then I'll be available to listen. Okay. So Bern, just let's dedicate to all the people, to those girls who were poisoned in Iran, to the victims in the earthquakes, in the floods, in shootouts, in everything. We dedicate all, whatever we have taught, may it help them in some way. May whatever benefit that arises from this practice go to the benefit of all sentient beings. May they be freed from the ocean of samsara, stirred by the waves of birth, sickness, aging, and death. Sonam die tamche zipane topne nepe dranam pamshene jeganachi balak dropaye sipe sole doa dro warsho. Stop recording.